In this video, I'll explain 3 o'clock, a las tres. Here are the rules for 3 o'clock. You start with a V1, like normal, and then you have cuando, donde, como, hasta que, o siempre que. Cuando, donde, and como don't have accents, and that's very important, but they still mean when, where, and how. There's a little tick mark next to the como. It's actually a 1. There's 3 different types of comos in the method, and this is just one of them. Hasta que means until, and siempre que means whenever. So after one of those words, you have a V2, and the V2 has 2 potential conjugations. It's normal, or the indicative, in uno punto punto y dos punto punto, and it's subjunctive in tres punto punto a cinco punto punto. There are some expressions that go along with a las tres, and here are some of them. Pase lo que pase is like whatever happens. Vayas donde vayas is wherever you go. And of course you can change that to yo or ellos or however you want. Then como quieras is like however you want. You can also change quieras to nosotros or ellos or whatever. And then estés donde estés is wherever you are. What 3 o'clock basically does is takes the question word like donde, como, cuando, and adds ever to the end. Wherever, whenever, however. The best way to explain a las tres is by taking a sentence and just changing it to all the different times. So we start at uno punto punto. Yo salgo cuando estoy listo. I go out when I'm ready. The V1 is salgo and the V2 is estoy. And both of those are in the indicative because we're in uno punto punto. Now let's try putting the sentence in dos punto punto. So here's that sentence in dos punto punto. If you don't remember, dos punto punto is the past. So we have both of these conjugated in the imperfect because I assume that the person is talking about something that happened over and over. Whenever I was ready, I left. Yo salía cuando estaba listo. Now it gets tricky because we're moving into tres punto punto, and now we need to start conjugating in the subjunctive. So here's the sentence in tres punto punto, which is talking about the future. Since it hasn't happened yet, we conjugate the V2 in the subjunctive. Yo saldré cuando esté listo means I will go out when I'm ready, but I'm not ready yet. Commands are also considered tres punto punto because the person that you're telling to do something hasn't done that thing yet. So when you see a command, it should also have a V2 in the subjunctive. When we start getting down into cuatro punto punto and cinco punto punto, it starts to sound really strange. To be honest, the most common times when you'll hear 3 o'clock are in uno punto punto and tres punto punto. But anyway, cuatro punto punto goes like this. We have yo saldría cuando estuviera listo. I would go out when I was ready. We have the conditional for the V1 and the imperfect subjunctive for the V2. So then we have cinco punto punto. Yo habría salido cuando hubiera estado listo. I would have gone out when I had been ready. But remember that cinco punto punto es el pasado imposible. So this person never got ready and never actually went out. We're going to do a few more examples just to make sure that you've got it. Here's another sentence in uno punto punto. Trabajo donde trabaja mi padre. I work where my dad works. Let's see what happens when we change it to the other times. So here's a sentence in dos punto punto, el pasado. When we're this far into Spanish grammar, there's not as much focus on preterite versus imperfect. I still expect you to know the difference between preterite versus imperfect and when to use each one. But for these sentences, the context isn't quite clear, so I'm just kind of picking and choosing whatever tenses I want. So we have trabajé donde trabajaba mi padre. I worked where my dad used to work. Now we're going into tres punto punto. In tres punto punto, trabajar becomes trabajaré donde trabaje mi padre. So we have the V1 in the future tense, we have donde, and then we have the subjunctive, because it's in tres punto punto, and this is saying, I will work wherever my dad works. So then in cuatro punto punto, we have trabajaría in the conditional, donde trabajara mi padre in the imperfect subjunctive. And what this sentence is saying in cuatro punto punto is, I would work wherever my dad would work. And then finally we have cinco punto punto. Habría trabajado donde hubiera trabajado mi padre. I would have worked wherever my dad had worked. But my dad didn't work anywhere. Remember that cinco punto punto es el pasado imposible, so whatever the sentence says in cinco punto punto didn't actually happen. I'm going to do one more set of examples with hasta que. Hasta que means until. So, número uno, comemos hasta que no tenemos hambre is we eat until we're not hungry. And here's the sentence in dos punto punto. Comimos hasta que no teníamos hambre. Uno punto punto and dos punto punto are pretty simple. But then it gets trickier when we get to tres punto punto. In tres punto punto, the V2 takes the subjunctive, so it becomes comeremos hasta que no tengamos hambre. We will eat until we're not hungry, but we're still hungry, so we're still eating. Then in cuatro punto punto, we have the conditional and the imperfect subjunctive. So it says, comeríamos hasta que no tuviéramos hambre. We would eat until we weren't hungry. Cinco punto punto is pretty exhausting. Habríamos comido hasta que no hubiéramos tenido hambre. We would have eaten until we weren't hungry. But with cinco punto punto, it didn't actually happen, so that means that these people just kept on eating because they never actually got full.